The Rwandan Genocide was the mass killing of Tutsis by Hutus in Rwanda in 1994. Around 800,000 people were killed in 100 days. However, the division between Hutus and Tutsis started well before the genocide in 1994. The Belgian imperialism that occurred in Africa started the division between the people in Rwanda, resulting in economic and social problems. King Leopold II was King of Belgium from 1865 to 1909. He was interested in the economic, climatic, agricultural, and environmental features of the Congo River Basin.
When King Leopold II arrived, there were no laws that protected native inhabitants of Rwanda. They were forced to work as slaves for the European people and were treated inhumanely and explicitly. The German colonists arrived in Rwanda in 1894 and worked to intensify local divisions to strengthen their own control.
Quotas were demanded from each family, and amputations acted as a punishment for people who did not comply. After the First World War, Belgium gained control of Rwanda and took over the government. The Hutu people lost their rights, and Tutsis were educated to allow them to obtain jobs. The introduction of identification cards furthered this division, fueling hatred between the two groups. However, the split between Hutus and Tutsis wasn't clearly established until 1957, when a group of Hutu scholars wrote the Bahutu Manifesto, the first statement that declared Hutus and Tutsis as different races. Political and social conflict between the two groups continued throughout the 20th century, especially after Rwanda's independence from Belgium in 1962. The European colonization in Africa, specifically in the Congo, left little resources for countries and their economies. The colonists exported raw materials such as beans, potatoes, tea and coffee from the colonies. They had also treated natives poorly and had restructured social and economic policies in African countries. Furthermore, no profits went to the natives and many of their resources could no longer be used. Despite these detriments, imperialization helped develop healthcare, technology, and education in Rwanda and other African countries. In the early 90s, Hutu extremists devised a campaign to assassinate Tutsi and moderate Hutu politicians with the Rwandan government. The goal of the campaign was to create a political vacuum where an interim government of Hutu extremists could be formed to take control of the country. On February 5, 1994, Hutu extremists shot down a government plane while it was descending into Kigali. Rwandan president and Burundi president, both moderate Hutus, were killed in the crash. The following day, the Prime Minister of Rwanda, also a moderate Hutu, and 10 Belgian peacekeeping soldiers guarding her were murdered. The killings primarily included the use of guns and crude instruments such as machetes and sharp tools to pummel or hack away at victims. Rape was also used as a weapon, where perpetrators that had AIDS intentionally raped Tutsi women to spread the virus. Tensions go back to the 5th and 11th centuries when Twa and Hutu tribes moved into Rwanda. Tutsi tribes then moved into the area in the 14th century, starting a long history of tension. Differences between the two groups were mainly social. Tutsis had a strong pastoralist tradition and gained social, economic, and political power over the Hutus, who were primarily agricultural farmers. However, when the country was colonized, the two groups were categorized on physical appearance over their social values. Tutsis were generalized as being taller with lighter skin. Conversely, Hutus were generalized as darker skinned and short. From 1898 to 1916, the German colonial movement pursued a policy of indirect rule, strengthening the power of the Tutsi ruling class. Due to the inequalities between the two groups, Hutus began to demand equality. In 1959, Hutus overthrew the government in the Hutu Revolution, where 20,000 Tutsis were killed. In 1963, 67, and 73, there were other numerous killings of Tutsis by extremist Hutus as well. However, in the lead up to the genocide, disagreements were mainly social. Hutu propagation of their anti-Tutsi agenda were prominent in the early 90s through newspapers and radio, further prompting ethnic violence and division. This social tension acted as one of the catalysts for the genocide in 1994. The main events that happened during the genocide included April 6, 1994, where both the Rwandan and Burundi president were killed when their plane is shot out of the sky. This is the official start of the Rwandan genocide. April 9, 1994, a massacre at Gikondo. Hundreds of Tutsis are killed in the Palatine Missionary Catholic Church. April 15, 1994, massacre at the Roman Catholic Church. Thousands of Tutsis are killed, first by grenades and guns, then by machetes and clubs. April 18, 1994, another set of massacres. An estimated 12,000 Tutsis are killed after sheltering at the stadium in Gietsi. April 28-29, approximately 250,000 people, mostly Tutsi, flee to the neighbouring Tanzania. May 23, 1994, the RPF takes control of the presidential palace. And finally, mid-July 1994, the Rwandan genocide ends when the Rwandan Patriotic Front gains control of the country. After the genocide had occurred, the magnitude of the events became apparent through the statistical data. According to Surf Survivors Fund, Over 100 days, around 800,000 to 1 million Tutsis and moderate Hutus were killed, with more than 6 people dying per minute. There were only around 300,000 to 400,000 survivors remaining. There was over 250,000 women raped and 20,000 children born as a result. By 1998, over 20% of adults had symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder. Over 67% of women tested positive for sexually transmitted infections. Finally, over 75,000 children were orphaned due to the genocide. In the years following the genocide, numerous experts have suggested that there was not sufficient intervention by other countries to stop the genocide. Despite the UN deploying peacekeepers in Rwanda, there was not any input from prominent Western countries. Ultimately, the genocide could have been avoided if the international response to the crisis was faster and more efficient than it had been. 2 months before the start of the genocide, Jacques-Roger Boubou, the head of the United Nations Assistance for Rwanda, sent a cable to the UN headquarters in New York. He reported that the security situation was deteriorating on a daily basis and that there were increasingly violent demonstrations, nightly grenade attacks, assassination attempts, political and ethnic killings. Despite pleas by the Belgian government to US and UK diplomats at the UN, the diplomats refused aid in February 1994. There were no other countries that were willing to lend aid to Rwanda, despite evidence of a looming genocide. The United States admitted to their lack of aid in March of 1998, when President Clinton went to Rwanda and presented the Clinton apology, stating that we in the United States and the world community did not do as much as we could have and should have done to try and limit what occurred.